He's definitely told a story. He may continue to tell, but as we see, it's not going to go his way if he does.
1.4 million.
1.4 million announced.
How are you doing? Welcome to Andreas Fröhlich Poker. In today's episode, I'm going to review the 300k Super Bowl win of Ike Haxton, one of the biggest pots. Let's get into the action.
150 declared, yeah. Haxton with a nice one, king 6 suited in there fighting, of course.
And unlike three-handed and up, one really doesn't have the luxury of exercising too much patience in heads-up poker.
That's exactly right, Ollie. The expression, the blinds are coming around really on full display. Heads up, every hand throwing chips in.
Haxton flops himself a king-high flush draw here.
He certainly does. A nice flop for Ike, to say the least.
Checks the best hand.
After Foxen raises it up with the queen deuce offsuit and Ike Haxton calling the king 6 of diamonds, the flop comes ace 10-8 with the 10-8 of diamonds. Now Ike Haxton checks it over to the preflop raiser, and queen deuce offsuit is a really interesting candidate here to put out a c-bet. The queen of diamonds is a really interesting blocker, and you can bet some more runouts if a diamond rolls off on the turn or the river. And also, conversely to some other textures, here queen high does not really have that much showdown value. On a more disconnected texture that is, for example, also rainbow, on ace deuce 3 rainbow for instance, queen high and king high gain a lot more showdown value because your opponent's not going to have is going to have a lot of 9 high, 10 high, jack high hands that are still behind, and you can win by checking down more often. Here that's not really the case, and Foxen puts out a c-bet of about two-thirds of the pot.
And looks up at a c-bet.
Foxen with queen high, queen of diamonds, c-betting indeed. Why not? And Haxton, I believe, will call, but let's see. Raising is possible.
Facing the c-bet, Haxton with the king 6 of diamonds has a king high and a flush draw, and I think he has a very clear call here. Sure, diamonds could also occasionally raise, but I think there's a lot better candidates for it. For example, diamonds with a gut shot. If he has king 6 of diamonds here, his king could also turn a second pair. And if he decided to check raise here on the flop, with the second pair rolling off, he would more often have showdown value if he went for a check call, because he keeps all his bluffs of his opponents in that player's range. However, if he check raises and gets called and the turn rolls off a king, well, that second pair now has a lot less value. So I think calling is much superior here. And if you want to go for a check raise, as I said, I think check raising with a gut shot and diamonds would be much better, or something, just pair straight draws, or like one diamond blocker that has much less potential check calling and cannot make as much showdown value as this hand in particular.
I think Ike will be sprinkling in probably a little more of the fringe raising in the cash game variety of heads up, where we can rebuy when disaster strikes, and that sweet 3 of diamonds will do it for this hand. Does Foxen have a plan, or will a diamond roll off on the end, which would really spell trouble for him?
Well,
let's see.
Really no equity on the flop, he suddenly has what he perceives to be some value to this queen deuce with the prospects of a queen high diamond.
True, and we do bully the straight draws and some of the 8x no diamonds sometimes, but Ike did come along on the 8-10 ace 2 diamonds facing a c-bet, so we have to be concerned. He does fire again, Ali, and well.
The turn rolls off the 3 of diamonds, and after Ike Haxton checks it over to Foxen, he puts in another double barrel here for about 550 into 830. And, this play is going to fold out quite a bunch of hands. Ike Haxton could have check called with some king highs, with some third pair, or some second pair, especially if the second pair doesn't have a diamond with it. It could certainly fold at this point, facing this double barrel that's rather also a large bet size. So he is definitely going to have a lot of fold equity, and I don't think he's going to win a showdown almost ever with the queen high. So this bet will work quite a bit.
A welcome sight for Mr. Haxton, to say the least. Let's see if he goes with the slow play or tries to boost it up and win this thing right now. As we see, the queen Dewey won't
Misses so
be
much hand
cooperating,
heads
but
up.
right.
I favor the flat, and then maybe we lead the river.
You're a very sneaky player, Ali. You're always favoring the flat and the slow play.
It's just
Ike Haxton's turn decision is actually really interesting here if you also think about pre-flop ranges. In heads-up poker, if you have a king-high flush on this turn, you could potentially get a lot of value from all other flushes. In heads-up poker, the pre-flop aggressor could literally have almost any flush, being the pre-flop raiser, and not really folding suited hands on the button. And that is very different from, for example, 6-max or 9-max, because here on ace-10, 8-3, if you have a king-high flush, if your opponent had a tighter pre-flop range, you cannot just check raise and hope for him to have a lower flush, because there are only very few combinations where that's possible. For example, some queen jack, queen 9 of diamonds, and potentially not even the ladder, jack 9 of diamonds, 7 of diamonds is also not always played, for example, from the 9-max under the gun by certain people. So in a heads-up scenario, the king-high flush has a lot more value check raising, but Haxton decides to go in and check call and potentially keep his opponent bluffing, and he can still check raise on the river if a blank rolls off.
Haxton agrees with you, though, so great
my
minds
devious
think alike.
nature, you know
right,
me.
right.
And the 6 on the end.
Foxen stone cold empty, and if Haxton checks it over to him, which would be very standard given the way this one is played, will Alex go for it? We shall see. Just queen high.
Remember, Foxen raised the button, barreled 235 on the flop, and then 515 on the turn after successive checks from Haxton.
He's definitely told a story he may continue to tell, but as we see, it's not going to go his way if he does. 1.4 million announced, and
Incinerated.
Haxton internally salivating. Yes, 1.4.
On the river, we see the 6 of hearts, which only completes the 7-9 suited that, for example, Foxen could have had. And Ike Haxton checks it over one more time to Foxen. He puts out almost a pot-sized bet here, putting a lot of pressure on Ike Haxton's ace-x and 10x with a diamond. For example, if Ike Haxton had ace-5 with the ace of diamonds, he would have played this flop most likely the same way, unless he somehow ended up check raising at some point with the ace of diamonds. But most likely he would have ended up exactly like this here on the river, and now it would have been really questions whether he would have called there. Now obviously he has the king 6 of diamonds, and we will never know, but yeah, sometimes you cannot assess and be too results oriented whether your bluff was good, as in this case. But I think it's fairly it's fair to assume that Ike Haxton would have folded quite a bunch of hands if he did not have the flush.
Million announced and incinerated, and poor timing for Mr. Foxen happens. A world of hurt coming his way shortly.
There's that burning smell in your living room.
Right. Haxton may balance things and go time bank. But let's see.
All in.
Yeah.
Because we were playing with heads-up ranges, now Ike Haxton with the king 6 of diamonds should have an easy value jam here. As I said before, Foxen could have a lot of lower flushes given that we play heads-up ranges, but if you were playing with tighter pre-flop ranges, getting value from lower flushes here, especially if the river stack to pot ratio were much larger, is actually pretty difficult, because there's not as many lower flushes as, for example, higher flushes. Also, higher flushes like the nut flush here is really well represented in people's pre-flop ranges when they are more narrow, such as an under the gun range. So I would say that, let's say they had like 6 million behind or something like that, we wouldn't see a check raise on the river if we had more narrow ranges before the flop, but here Ike Haxton's an easy value jam and the hand is over.
And Alex doesn't get cute. Just no.
If you want to see the entire footage, the link is in the description below. You can watch it on pokergo.com. Now, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the button down there and subscribe to the channel to see some more hand reviews coming up in the future here. Thanks for watching.
Nice split screen there, both watching on intently. Here it is, Ali.
So
River
much
coming.
riding on this card. The river.
Bang,
It's a
there
jack.
it is.
Runner, 2 pair.
A little
for Ike
anticlimactic
Haxton.
to win it with the worst hand pre, but